It's Monday, which means it's time for the Game of Thrones rewrite. This time it's part 2. I'll set up the rest of the world, or hopefully most of it, and I'll share my plans for E3. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
I had a great weekend, man. On Friday, I went down to TJ to Mexico because there was the big beer expo going on, the 2019 beer expo, which is phenomenal. It's a great event. A couple of buddies of mine, they have their own brewery down in TJ. It's called Viva Brewing. And so they're part of this event. And holy crap, man, it's phenomenal. I go every year for one reason, and it's not because of the beers. It's because, I mean, I can already get the beers that I want with my buddies. I don't really care that much about that. No, they have... for those of you who don't know, I studied in Guadalajara for a year, and in Guadalajara they have a traditional dish which is called a torta ahogada, which is a torta, but it's imagine, like, how can I explain this? It's just bathed in salsa, and it's an amazing type of bread because the bread is really hard, and so with salsa, since it's bathed in it, it loosens it up. It's really spicy. My mouth is watering right now thinking about it. But anyway, every year at the festival, there's always one little truck that serves the tortas, and they're delicious. They're identical, like, to the ones of Guadalajara. So I go for that every single year. Also to help out my friends because they asked me to help out, and I'm a bartender, and so they know that I know what I'm doing behind the bar. But holy crap, those tortas, man, they're fantastic. I had 2 of them, and I was dying. You know that when you're growing up, you think that certain things are normal that shouldn't be. Like, for example, after I ate the torta, I felt like heartburn. You know, like, kind of like your stomach is on fire or your heart. Well, it's in the name. You feel like your heart's burning a little. And at first you think like, oh, well, it's just, because I ate something, a little bit of spice. It's the heat of the spice or something. Turns out it's actually a bad thing, but I don't care. I'm not gonna stop eating tortas ahogadas just because I got a little bit of heartburn. I don't care. I didn't even think it was a weird thing at first until I finally, one day somebody told me, like, oh no, I feel like this. And like, oh, you don't feel that all the time? Isn't that like a normal thing? Like, no, it's really uncomfortable. Like, oh well, I guess weird. I just deal with it. But anyway, so the event this year it was Friday and Saturday. I only went Friday night. 25,000 people. 25,000 people all there to drink beer, eat amazing food, and to see it's a Mexican band, old school Mexican band called Caifanes, which they have a pretty decent show. I was surprised that they played more newer songs. I expected them to play more of the oldies, fan favorites. But it was a good show. It was a lot of fun, and dude, it was great. The vibe was amazing. There was no drama, at least none that I saw or heard of. So it was great. It was a great event. The rest of the weekend, I pretty much spent it. I spent it playing Red Dead Redemption 2, which just keeps getting better and better. Oh, and also, no, wait, I didn't just do that. No, I also, I showed my kid brother Rome. I kept watching a few more episodes of Rome with my kid brother, and holy shit, what a fantastic. And he actually gave me a pretty good comment. He's like, dude, these episodes go by fast. You don't even feel them. And I was like, yeah. Because every single thing that happens, every single conversation that happens has a purpose. They're not just there wasting time. And everything that happens that doesn't have a purpose is extremely entertaining. You're just, holy shit, Romans were really fucking weird. They did all that? Weird, but that's awesome. So, and I remember back in the day, I read an article about like the making of Rome and why it got canceled and all that stuff. And one of the things that the writers said, that their biggest challenge, not only just to be historically accurate, but to also write lines that they consider to be worthy of Julius Caesar, worthy of Augustus Caesar, worthy of Mark Antony. So I feel like they nailed it. They're perfect. The dialogues in that show are phenomenal. Maybe the best ever. But that's just my opinion. If any of you have seen the show, let me know. Before I get into this Game of Thrones things, let me just give you a quick reminder that Super Dario World is officially part of the show's podcast network, which means you can find it in the iHeartRadio app. Just type in The Show Presents Super Dario World. You could also find it in the Rock 105.3 page. Just click on the podcast tab, or you can find it on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube as Super Dario World. So no updates there. Still the same. That's the thing. That's what I'm going to keep it this week. Also, there's a big thing going on this week. Big thing going on in the world of gaming. That's E3, the E3 conventions. which is pretty much the world's premiere event on anything computer-related and video game-related. So there's a bunch of news coming out. Bunch of news coming out. So this week is E3 week after they do the Game of Thrones thing. So Monday's still going to be Game of Thrones rewrite day. The rest of the week is pretty much going to be dedicated to there's so much news. So much news coming down from E3. I've barely even been able to keep up. I've only been able to see a few of the trailers and read a few of the articles, but there's so much stuff coming out, so much. It's a bombardment of news. It might even go on till next week, because I don't think I can go through everything. I might just give you all the news like over the week as it comes, and next week I'll do a top 10 of the most important things, or the most relevant things, or the things that I think are the coolest. I don't know. I need to make up my mind on that. But yeah, big thing going on, and I will not ignore it. I will dedicate the rest of this week solely to E3 after the Game of Thrones. So Monday, still Game of Thrones day. Rest of the week, E3. But okay. Oh, the things I do for love. Okay, so I'm guessing with that you can kind of have an idea of whose story I'm going to continue setting up here. But first, let me give you a quick recap of the things that happened on the first setup. I basically just set up the North, and apparently it was way bigger than I expected, and it needed way more things fixing. So I'll just do a quick recap. Now, just let me give you a quick reminder that the story, the official rewrite, starts at the beginning of Season 7. So I'll be doing my best for each character to start exactly where they did on Season 7. I'm just going to do a quick little fixes on the season before that just bugged me and did not make any sense. But overall, most of the characters will begin Season 7 the same way that they did on the show. So, just a quick recap. Jon Snow, I fixed the whole resurrection thing that didn't make any sense. I made it so that people are actually looking at him as a godly character, because he came back from the dead. I fixed the Battle of the Bastards, which did not make sense. And I also fixed that he had a personality change. Because when he just came back from the dead, he was just a little bit more morose than before. Now, Jon actually has a personality change. He's a little bit darker. He's a little bit rougher. He's less trusting. And he puts up with a little bit less BS. So, you know how death might change you? It did. Anyway, although he didn't technically die. But you can just go back to the part 1, and then I'll explain how that happened. But anyway, Jon Snow on the way to the wall to defend against the White Walkers, and he's bringing Vale soldiers with him. Just a couple of them, the most trusted of the Vale soldiers, so that they can see with their own eyes that the White Walkers are an actual threat, and then they could report to their lords and be like, dude, yeah, we actually should be going to the wall. So, which made it a little bit more sense than bringing a fucking White Walker back with them. You bring trusted people with you so they can see it. So he's on his way to the wall. Now, Bran, I left him pretty much the same way. He's almost at Castle Black. Benjen Stark, his uncle, at that point, remember, he was an undead, and he was dropping him off at the wall at Castle Black. But he did not have the Tower of Joy visions, because honestly, who cares? No, the show never set up anything about Jon's parentage. In fact, everybody thought that it was Ned Stark, and they were okay with it. Everybody thought that it was Wyla, because Ned Stark mentions her on the first season, and nobody ever gave it a second thought. So I just eliminated the whole Jon is Aegon Targaryen storyline because it was stupid. It didn't make any sense. And if anybody wants me to get deeper into that, I will, and I'll explain it perfectly. But anyway, that's where Bran is. He's almost at Castle Black. Sansa was left at Winterfell to run Winterfell with Littlefinger. Now, the thing here is that Sansa is left to administer things, to fix the economy, to feed people, and Littlefinger is there to make sure that Sansa gets the most amount of power possible, and therefore cementing his own power in the north. Because at that point, Littlefinger has the Vale forces, and he has a buttload of money, because I don't know if you guys know this. It was a plot that I think it was dropped, but Littlefinger had been stealing money from the crown for a really long time and getting them in debt. So Littlefinger can finance the gathering of food, the gathering of resources for the north. So the more money that Sansa has to borrow from Littlefinger, the more she's in his pocket, almost literally. So that's what Littlefinger's doing there at that moment. And okay, so those were the big four in the north. But a lot of people ask me, dude, well, what happened with Davos? What happened with Brienne? What happened with Theon? Okay, let me just get those out of the way real quick as well. Theon, I mentioned this after he saved Sansa. Instead of just letting him go, he goes with them to the wall. Jon wants to kill him, but decides not to because Sansa asks him not to because he technically saved her life. So he pardons his life, but he's still a prisoner, and a very valuable prisoner. He's the heir of the Greyjoys. So Theon is right now, at this moment, after the Battle of the Bastards, he is technically a prisoner at Winterfell, and he is under Sansa's charge. Now, Sansa is kind of cool in the Ned Stark way, so she lets him wander the castle. However, it's not really safe for him to do so because all the Northmen hate him, which makes Littlefinger kind of put him under his protection, and therefore he's going to start influencing him and try to make him into an asset. So that's where Theon is. He's with Sansa, still technically a prisoner, although he gets free reign. Brienne, if you remember, at the end of Season 6, Brienne was sent down to Riverrun to try and get the Blackfish to join her army, well, to join Sansa's army before the Battle of the Bastards. However, the Blackfish refuses, and when Jaime Lannister takes Riverrun, he's the only death. All right, so I thought that was stupid, and so what I would have done differently, everything with Brienne and Jaime could have still been the same. They could have had their meeting. They could have had their talk about the sword and stuff, which if you guys remember before, talking about swords is talking about penises. Anyway, so when Brienne offers to return the sword, you can get it. And when Jaime says you can keep your sword, you get the symbolism there. Anyway, so Brienne, what she does is she convinces the Blackfish to, instead of staying there and die, to go out and help them fight. So the Blackfish, and he gets a few of his men, as many as he can, to sneak out of the castle. And so Brienne of Tarth, the Blackfish, and a few of the Riverrun soldiers are off with them on their way to the north. That's what Brienne is doing. And Davos honestly has no place in the world. He was the hand of Stannis. Now Stannis is dead. He has nowhere to go because Stannis lost the war, which means that he pretty much lost everything along with him. So, also, he was against Melisandre using magic to bring Jon back to life because he's against magic. So, after witnessing the resurrection of Jon, he kind of starts following that guy because, again, he has nothing to do and nowhere to go. Also, because Stannis did appear sympathetic to the whole situation of the Night's Watch. I mean, they traveled all the way to the north to defeat the Wildling army to help the Night's Watch. Now, granted, they were trying to build an army, so they had ulterior motives, but they did go up there to help. So, Davos is a simple-minded dude. So he might have been like, all right, okay, well, Stannis did this. It's what he wanted. I might as well just keep going at this. Also, and this is something that I really criticized the show over. If you guys remember, after Samwell Tarly kills a White Walker, because Samwell Tarly, Fat Sam, he was the first guy to kill a White Walker. And after he does so, Stannis brings him into a conversation. The only conversation Sam had with Stannis Baratheon, Sam tells him that the way that he killed the White Walker was stabbing him with dragonglass. And Stannis was like, dragonglass? Obsidian? And Sam was like, yeah, that. Stannis was like, oh, we have it in Dragonstone, which makes perfect sense. So I always criticize the show that, A, Stannis told Sam that there was dragonglass in Dragonstone, and he didn't have to go all the way to the fucking Citadel to figure that one out. But also, you know who else lived in Dragonstone? Davos. So if Davos wanted to be of service to Jon, he could have told Jon, hey, there's dragonglass in Dragonstone. The people holding Dragonstone are loyal to Stannis, or were before I was his hand. Let me go to Dragonstone and try to get as much dragonglass as possible before it gets taken by the Lannisters. So this would have been early on in the season. So Davos, instead of fighting in a place where he would have been useless because he's not really a fighter and he's not really a military strategist, he would have been on his way to Dragonstone to try to get as much dragonglass as he could. So, okay, that's it for the characters in the north. Let's move on to another northern character, but who's not in the north. And I'm talking about Samwell Tarly. Now, if you paid attention, I had a few issues with the way Sam's story went, but he ends up that season in the Citadel. So far we'll keep everything for Sam the same, except that when he stops at Hornhill, which is the castle of House Tarly, he does not, I repeat, does not steal the greatsword Heartsbane, which is the Valyrian steel sword of his family. Now, if you guys have listened to my podcast before, I did explain that a Valyrian steel sword is worth more than the fucking castle it's in. that sword is worth way more than Hornhill and all its lands. It's so rare, it's so valuable, it's ancient, it's the ancient sword of that house. And Sam willingly gave it up. Granted, he kind of did it at gunpoint, well, at sword point, but he did give it up. That sword legally belongs to his father, and in the case of his death, to his younger son, to his younger brother, Dickon. Well, I mean, youngest son of Randall Tarley. Anyway, the point is, the sword's not his. He gave up all claim to it, and he's not a fighter. So him trying to steal that sword never made any sense, and the fact that Randall Tarley did not go after him after he stole this. I mean, he knew where he was going. Randall knew that Sam was going to the Citadel. So not chasing after him and taking the sword back was ridiculous. Again, imagine a sword that's more valuable than the castle it is in. You would chase after that like crazy. Like, you wouldn't even think about it. So, one big change there is that Sam does not steal the sword. Another big change, I hated how they made Dickon so old. He's like a 30-year-old dude. Dickon's supposed to be Sam's younger brother, and by a lot. So I would have made Dickon at the most a teenager. At the very most. So those two changes to Sam's story. Everything else stays the same. He goes to the... And also, because Dickon's death would have been more relevant in the show if he would have been, like, younger. It would have been sadder. But anyway, so Sam arrives at the Citadel, but does not steal the sword. That's where his story will start at Season 7. Okay, moving on. And I mentioned them earlier before, Jaime Lannister. So Jaime Lannister in Season 6 kind of travels around and goes to Riverrun and basically takes over Riverrun from the Blackfish. I already explained to you what would happen with the Blackfish, and the way that actually Jaime kind of gets Riverrun back is very similar to the way he does it in the book, which is by threatening Edmure Tully. For those of you who don't remember, Edmure Tully is the guy who gets embarrassed by Sansa in the council meeting at the end of the final episode of Game of Thrones. That guy. So he is Catelyn's brother, technically the rightful heir of Riverrun, and so Jaime basically threatens him with killing his child unless he gives up Riverrun. Unless he goes into Riverrun, takes command from the Blackfish, and gives it up. So I would leave that pretty much the same. The big change with Jaime will come off afterwards, because if you guys remember, at the end of that season, Cersei blows up the Sept, kills all the Tyrells, kills all the Faith Militant, and her son, Tommen, the King Tommen, commits suicide. So the season actually ends with her taking the crown of the Seven Kingdoms and Jaime showing up to see her take it. So I think Jaime should have had a greater reaction to that, but I'm going to change the things that happen in King's Landing a little bit because they didn't make a lot of sense. Now, and actually they're minor. Unfortunately, we have to kill off a whole bunch of characters in order for this to make sense, because otherwise I'm going to have to keep a lot of plot lines that a lot of people will not understand. So in order to make things simple, I unfortunately have to kill off all the Tyrells. So the way that I would have done that is, first off, the way that they captured Loras Tyrell, that was the gay Tyrell, the guy who was the lover of Renly Baratheon, the brother of Robert Baratheon. The way that they took him out made no sense. Renly got captured by the Faith Militant, dudes that had clubs. He was a knight. He was a knight, one of the best knights in the Seven Kingdoms, and he was always surrounded by his soldiers. The fact that they even made it all the way to him and managed to arrest him is ridiculous. So the way that would have gotten Loras out of the way, that makes a little bit more sense from Cersei's perspective. She would have tasked Loras with going to Dragonstone and retaking it. Now, this always bugged me. I never understood why nobody ever retook Dragonstone if it was empty. Because in the show, it was fucking empty, and it made no sense. Dragonstone is literally across the bay from King's Landing. Right in the middle of it. So if you want... That's why Stannis was the biggest threat. Stannis had the smallest army, but he was right there, and he could have screwed everybody up. So that's why everybody was always terrified of Stannis, because he was right fucking there. So the first thing you want to do is you want to retake Dragonstone. So ideally what you do is you want to do a siege or a blockade. That way you starve them out and eventually they'll leave. Because as long as you have a blockade and they don't have enough forces to fight back, there won't be an issue. Also, reinforcing an island, very difficult. So they're just having a blockade, and Loras is there pretty much just sitting on his ass waiting for the people inside of Dragonstone to die. That was Cersei's way of getting Loras the hell out of King's Landing. However, Once Marjorie gets arrested, and by the Faith Militant, by the priests, once she gets arrested, Loras says, fuck this, I'm going to take this castle now, and I'm going to go get my sister back. So he tries to, he makes an assault on Dragonstone. By the way, at this point, Davos is trying to figure out a way to smuggle through the blockade, which he's done before, he's a good smuggler, and try to smuggle as much dragon glass as he can. The fact that Loras decides to do a siege attack on the castle completely ruins his plans. So that's what happens to Davos. So Loras sets an attack on the castle, and during that attack, he gets severely injured, and it costs him his life. Or at least he's dying. So that's how you get Loras out of the way. Actually, you know what? He dies, because we have to kill him off, unfortunately. It sucks, but unfortunately, Loras, if I want to continue with the way that things are on the show, Loras has to be killed off. So Loras gets killed off by taking Dragonstone. So he does take Dragonstone, but because he was rash and hot-headed, he ends up dying in the middle of it. So things continue normally on King's Landing. It looks like Marjorie has her plan. Cersei has her walk of shame and is trying to set other things up via Qyburn. She's trying to cement her power. She's trying to cement her support. And I didn't like how they did it, but she could bomb the Sept of Baelor. However, the big thing here is that she does not take credit for it. She says that it could have been just a random thing, an accident, that it was leftovers from the Mad King's wildfire vault, because the Mad King had some vaults. The Mad King, Jaime Lannister actually explains this, that the Mad King had wildfires hidden, set up all throughout the city, and in case that the city ever got taken, he was going to just kill everybody in King's Landing. So that's why Jaime killed the Mad King, and that's why he became the Kingslayer. He confessed this to Brienne. You should remember it. So Cersei could have played it off like that, not just being like, oh yeah, I killed everybody. She could have played it off like, no, it was probably some of the Mad King's leftovers, and the Mad Targaryens. So when Daenerys came over, people would have been like, oh shit, another Mad Targaryen, except this one doesn't have wildfire, she has an actual fucking dragon. So to cement the fear on the enemy, the devil that's kind of the card that Cersei's going to play. So a few things that were ridiculous was Marjorie figuring out that Cersei had a plan instead of just not showing up. Another thing that didn't make sense was Cersei luring Lancel Lannister into all the way to the point where he could have actually stopped the explosion. I get why they did it. It was a build-up. It was like, oh my god, will he be able to do it? No. For tension. Stupid. It was all stupid. So I would have made Cersei just blow that thing up way faster, way quicker, instead of having people wait there for a super long time and just not take credit for it. However, that explosion, since it's wildfire, it would have spread a little bit throughout the city, and it would have spread a whole bunch of chaos. Because wildfire, if you guys don't know, you can't put it out with water. You can't put it out in the normal way. You need to use sand. So Cersei, kind of knowing that this would happen, she would have her group of pyromancers. So the pyromancers are the guys who actually create the wildfire. She would have them in the ready to put out as much of the wildfire as possible, limit the damage, and that way not burn her entire fucking city down, and so also kind of look like the hero, because it was her men that saved the day at the end of it. They didn't know that she set it up. They might have suspected it, but they know for sure that it was her men who stopped it. Does that make sense? So it gives her the not the benefit of the doubt, but at least it's a slightly better PR than being just like, oh yeah, I fucking blew him up, because fuck him. It's more kind of like, did she do it? Did she not? Well, I mean, she did stop it, but how did she know? I don't know, but I mean, if she can blow them up, the most important people in the city, maybe we should not cross her. But what if it was, all the small folk who weren't there, who are kind of simple-minded, that would have been like, oh yeah, a Targaryen did it. It made sense. Fire. That's what the Mad King used to burn people with wildfire all the time. It makes sense. So I would have done it that way. And so Tommen's suicide, it could have just been a side effect of Cersei's plans gone wrong. She did not anticipate Tommen loving Marjorie Tyrell so much. So all the Tyrells die, except for Olenna Martell, the Queen of Thorns. All the priests, all the Faith Militant, all of them die in that explosion. Loras was already dead in Dragonstone, and Tommen still commits suicide. Now, as they are crowning Cersei, which, by the way, never really made any sense, because if you follow the line of succession, it should not have been Cersei, it should have been somebody else. But let's assume that they gave it to Cersei because she saved the city from wildfire, right? She kind of already killed her opposition, and she already had everybody else in her pocket. So everybody at this point is Cersei's creature, and they're like, oh yeah, it should be you. You were the queen. You were Robert's queen, so it makes sense that it should be you. Please don't blow us up. Anyway, Jaime shows up, and he asks her point blank if she did it. But Cersei says no, it was still like the cachets from the Mad King. Like, you should know. You should remember this. You were there. You stopped the Mad King for it. And so she blatantly lies to Jaime, and Jaime is pissed because their son killed himself. Tommen killed himself because of it. And if you guys remember in earlier seasons, Marcella, which is their daughter, died in his arms. So by this point, Book Jaime doesn't care about his kids, okay? He doesn't give a rat's ass about his kids. Like, he raped Cersei right in front of Joffrey's body. He doesn't really care. But in the show, they made it so he cares a little. So if this is the last thing that actually tied Cersei and Jaime together, and she was directly responsible for the death of their child, that's where the rift could happen. Like, because Jaime feels the lie, you know? He knew about the cache, so at one point before that, he probably scoured the city to make sure that there was nothing there. But it could have been sabotage, and he knows the way Cersei thinks. He knows the way that she could have played it, and he knows when she's lying. So Jaime feels that lie, coupled with the grief and anger of the death of his child, added to the fact that he could have been there to help him, but Cersei sent him away. So it was a lot of things, a lot of resentment, and it's that moment that he and Cersei's relationship starts to break. So Jaime ends the season in King's Landing, seeing Cersei being crowned, but you don't really see him as Cersei's ally. You see him kind of as starting to feel resentful and distrustful, and seeing Cersei for the crazy person that she really is. Now, on the other hand, Cersei, I already told you what she would do, but I didn't like that her character was getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And actually, in the books, it's super. The Cersei chapters are super interesting because the chick's batshit crazy. And I mean, by extreme levels of paranoia. She's nuts. And she hides it really well. But it's really fun being inside her head. Anyway, so Cersei's getting wilder and wilder and wilder. But after the death of Tommen, she becomes really cold and calculating and controlled. No, that should have been the moment that the straw that broke the camel's back. So she has her checkmate moment, or the thing that she considers to be checkmate. I'm getting rid of the Tyrells. I got rid of the Tullys in Riverrun. I got rid of Stannis. I got rid of the Faith Militant. I got rid of everybody with one fell stroke. I'm winning. Every single enemy I've ever had, done. I'm winning. Well, not at the city. Every single enemy she's had in the city. Everybody, they're dead. I'm done. I'm winning. But she never considered that would cost her the life of her son. Which, if you guys remember, from seasons 1 through 6, Cersei's only redeeming quality was that she was a mother, that she loved her children. It was her only redeeming quality, which is a completely show thing. In the book, she doesn't really care. But she uses her children as kind of tools for power. But anyway, in the show, it was set up that her only redeeming quality was that she was a good mother, that she loved her children, and she sacrificed and she did everything for her children. And the thing that would have finally won her crown, which is what she desired most in the world, cost her the thing that she loved the most in the world, which is all her children, which is what you call kind of poetic justice. So the story in King's Landing ends with Jaime showing up and being resentful and no longer trusting Cersei, and Cersei kind of starting to break and going wilder and crazier because she's gotten everything she wanted. And what did it cost her? Everything. Okay, so that's King's Landing. Everything else is fine. Like Pycelle getting killed by Qyburn is fine. The Mountain being a gigantic zombie is fine. Everything else is fine. Those are the two big changes I would have done there. Now, for the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, Bronn, honestly, I wouldn't have changed anything. Bronn could stay the same. I think at that point he was in his castle. He was enjoying life. Jaime hadn't recruited him at that point, but he's just chilling. The Brotherhood Without Banners does recruit the Hound. You know, the Hound was kind of trying to be peaceful, but some rogue members of the Brotherhood Without Banners does kill the people that he was trying to be peaceful with, or his friends, I should have said. Anyway, so the Hound encounters the Brotherhood Without Banners again, the rogue dudes who are about to be hanged by the good ones. However, the Brotherhood Without Banners is joined by Melisandre. So Melisandre caught up to Thoros and Myr, who are both Red Priests, and Melisandre is sharing the story of Jon Snow, how she brought him back and stuff. Now, Thoros is not really convinced because right there with him is Beric Dondarrion, and Beric Dondarrion has been brought back from the dead multiple times. But Melisandre explains that Jon Snow, it was more of a rebirth, more than a resurrection. He wasn't necessarily resurrected because he was still alive, but his spirit was somewhere else, and she brought him back, and that's why he's still technically alive. He's not an undead like Beric Dondarrion. He is a reborn, and that has to do with the prophecy of Azor Ahai. And at the end, after they kill off the rogue members of the Brotherhood, she convinces the Hound to try to look into the flames because she knows that men who've been traumatized by fire, who have close experiences with fire, are more keen to better experience, to better visions. So she convinces the Hound to look into the flames for the first time and actually see what they see in the flames. And he sees a vision of the Night King, of all the things that are going to happen in the north. And so he shares that with everybody. And so Thoros is like, fuck, all right, okay, I have to go north. And Melisandre will continue to spread the word of Jon Snow, to spread the legend, and that Azor Ahai and all that stuff. So that's how the Hound and the Brotherhood Without Banners gets enlisted into going to fight at Castle Black at the wall. Now, let's talk about the Greyjoys. Let's talk about the Iron Islands. So what happened in Season 6 was that Euron Greyjoy killed Balon Greyjoy, and he took power, right? He had a big council, and the King's Moot, and everybody voted for him over Yara, who in the books is named Asha, but I'll call her Yara, which I hate. Anyway, so the things that would have made differently here is that, fine, Euron kills Balon, whatever. The King's Moot happens, but however, if you guys remember, Theon is not there for the King's Moot. So, Theon isn't there. Theon is captured in Winterfell, and Yara states her case, everybody ignores her, and votes for Euron. So Euron becomes the king of the Iron Isles the exact same way, and Yara, knowing that Euron is going to kill her as soon as he can, bolts the fuck out of there, the same as in the show. So she leaves, and as she's trying to figure out what the fuck she's going to do, she remembers that there's a rule in the King's Moot. And one of the rules of the King's Moot is that if all available candidates are not there, they have an opportunity to do a revote, a recount, basically. And so Yara knows that the best candidate, the one with the best claim, is Theon. Theon was not there. So that's when she decides, okay, I need to find a way to get Theon back. So she returns to the north and tries to figure a way to do that. She tries to figure out a way that she can get access to Theon and get him the fuck out of there so they could redo the King's Moot without Euron there. Anyway, so Euron, on the other hand, wants to get his queen. However, things are going to be very different. But I'll get into Euron's story later because it's related to somebody else's. And I've already gone over half an hour. So I think this is a good place to stop. And so just to do a quick recap of everybody. Theon, prisoner of Winterfell. Davos went to Dragonstone, but as he was trying to smuggle things out, Loras Tyrell took the castle, so he got screwed. He couldn't get any dragon glass from Dragonstone. Sam is at the Citadel, but did not steal the sword Heartsbane. Brienne got the Blackfish out of Riverrun, and they're on their way back to Winterfell. Jaime just is starting to mistrust Cersei and is concerned about her mental sanity. Cersei found a way to get everything she wanted, got rid of all her enemies, found a way to put the blame of the bombing on Daenerys, or at least hint at it. But, however, the loss of her kids is kind of starting to break her mentally, and she's becoming increasingly more paranoid. And the fact that Jaime's not trusting her is making her not trust him more. I forgot to mention that little tidbit right there. Melisandre convinces the Brotherhood Without Banners and Sandor Clegane to go to the north via a vision in the flames and also the prophecy of Azor Ahai with Thoros to go to the north and help Jon Snow fight the Night King, the Hound, as I mentioned, with Melisandre. Well, not with Melisandre. Gets convinced by Melisandre to have a vision, and that convinces him to go fight in the north. And the Greyjoys, the Kingsmoot happens, but without Theon. But since Theon wasn't there, Yara is gonna figure out a way that she can get him away from the Starks so that they could redo the Kingsmoot and so that she might find a way to win. So that's it. I'm stopping things there right now. The things with Euron, the things with everybody else, they will be related. The things with the Tyrells, the things with the Martells, Dorne, the Reach, and that bit with Euron will be related to other people. So I'm going to stop it right there. It already went way too long. But in the next one, we're going to wrap things up. The setup took way longer than I expected. I expected it to be one quick episode. It's now going to be 3. So the first one was the North. I'll do a recap next one. This one was the 7 Kingdoms, or at least 5 of the 7 Kingdoms, technically. And the next one will be Essos and whoever I did not finish wrapping up, because everybody else is related to Dany's story, and I'll throw in Arya, just because of reasons. But anyway, that's it for today. That's it for the Game of Thrones rewrite for this week. I'll be back next Monday with the next setup. I already teased it. And like I said earlier, for the rest of this week, this is E3 week. The rest of the week, we're going to be talking pretty much all video games and 1 or 2 big news things that might have happened. There's always, if something big happens, I will mention it. So that's going to be my main focus of the week. As always, if you want to contact me with any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can find me at Dario the Show on Instagram. Because I forgot that I needed to wrap up Theon, Davos, and Brienne last week. So I appreciate the people who reached out and like, dude, okay, so what happened to this character? You kind of need to give us a wrap up, bro. I did not forget about them. I just forgot to mention what happened on last episode. I was kind of all over the place last episode. Hopefully this thing is starting to get a little bit more cohesive. It's starting to make a little bit more sense. Hopefully you enjoyed it. But like I said, that's it for today. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.